Hi, my name is Amanda and I'm with Hopefully Homesteading. I'm working with NESCO and I wanted to demonstrate for you today their Smart Canner. Alright, so today we're going to practice using this NESCO Smart Canner in a low stakes method. We're going to can water. The NESCO canner holds 4 wide mouth quart jars very nicely, and 8 cups of water are used to operate this piece. We can start warming our jars and our water, saving time by using the browning function at the front. Just by pushing brown, it'll start warming the water, which can take some time to get to temperature. I've gone ahead already and filled 3 jars and placed them in the canner. So while this starts to warm, let me share with you some important safety features. A common question that's asked is why you'll see an error code EEE on the front after your canner is started. It's often related to this gasket or an inability for the canner to reach the pressure it needs because of an obstruction or a leak somewhere inside. Make sure that this gasket is seated properly and well cared for, and that the inside the inside vent isn't obstructed in any way. There's also a vent at the top, and you want to make sure that as you get this started, this is set to exhaust. So let's go ahead and fill this jar. I've already warmed this jar and I've got warm water here. We're using a 2-piece lid that has a rubber gasket on it. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that there isn't any defect in the lid and that there isn't any chips or cracks on the jar, or you could have sealing issues. Next, we're going to fill our jar with warm water to a 1-inch headspace. Headspace is really important when you're canning because it allows for food to expand during the cooking process and the pressurizing process. And if you don't have that expansion, you can have food spill out of the jar, you can have jars break, or you can have lids buckle and not seal. Then we're going to look at the gasket and make sure that the rubber compound is looking okay. Next, we're just going to use a clean piece of toweling and wipe the top of our jar to make sure that there isn't anything interfering with the seal. We'll put our lid down and we'll put our band on. You want to turn this until you meet resistance and then turn a 1/4 turn after that. Again, if this is on too tight, you don't have the ability for this food to vent some pressure and can cause problems with jars breaking or cracking. We're going to load this into our canner. Close, swivel the top so that it locks in place. To set your Smart Canner, all you're going to do is hit high pressure, and for this demonstration, we're going to set the time to 15 minutes. You're going to hit start, and this will start cycling. So you'll notice the canner flip to E10 on the display panel. This allows us to see a 10-minute vent time that's absolutely critical for pressure canning. This E10 will show up after there's a continuous stream of steam coming from the exhaust. That's normal and something that you want to see. We're going to let this timer drop down to 0 before we flip this to let it be airtight and start building the pressure we need. You'll notice that this steam is coming out, and that's fine. It's perfectly normal. That's what we want to see. Make sure that when you're putting this on your counter, you're avoiding setting this underneath a kitchen cabinet. Over time, the steam could damage your cabinet. Now that our timer's at 0, we're going to switch this to airtight. It's normal to hear some bubbling on the inside of the canner and to see a little bit of sputtering at the red safety valve. So our NESCO canner has run its pressurized cycle and we're ready to open it up and see what we've got. It's important that you allow this to do a 1-hour natural vent. It'll release its own pressure as long as the machine is off and unplugged. You want to make sure that the red pin is dropped, and that will tell you for sure that there isn't any pressure left in the canner. Swivel the top to open, and when you're opening it, make sure you're standing away from it so that any steam that comes out doesn't burn you. Once you've opened it, make sure you've got a tea towel ready to go. Taking your jars out with a jar lifter is the safest way to do this. These jars are going to be extremely hot. Setting them on a tea towel will help ensure that the jars don't thermal shock off the counter and break, ruining all your hard work. Take your jars out, set them on a tea towel so that there's plenty of room for the jars to have air moving around them. You might notice what looks like a boiling action on the inside of your jars, and that's just a result of the pressure change between the canner and the ambient air. That's normal and nothing to worry about. Once you take your jars out, you'll let them sit undisturbed for 12 to 24 hours. You might notice on the inside of your canner or on the outside of your jars a white mineral deposit, and that's normal. You can prevent that from happening by putting a little bit of white vinegar in your water prior to processing. After these have sat undisturbed for 12 to 24 hours, you can take the rings off, give them a wash with a little bit of soap and water. You can store them in a cool, dry place and expect them to be shelf stable for anywhere between 12 and 18 months. So how do you know if your jar is sealed properly? There's a couple ways you can tell. One, the top of the lid should be convex, meaning you can push on it and there isn't any movement. You'll notice on this jar, it dips and makes a snap noise. This jar wasn't sealed. On the seal, you also might notice when you take it out of the canner that your lid band is loose. That's okay and that won't affect the seal. Don't try and retighten this band because you're going to store it without the band on. Take the band off, take a teaspoon, and just give a tap on the top. If you hear a nice tinny noise, you know that it's sealed properly versus a dull thud. The other thing you can do is try and lift the jar with the seal. Just grab at the lid and lift it off the counter. If your jar lifts with you, you know you've got a good seal.